Now on BBC News, 1 year on, as the economy starts to recover in Sri Lanka, calm seems to have returned. But we examine the aftermath of a crisis and how the recovery of people's livelihoods is still a long way off.
Surface, it seems calm has returned to Sri Lanka. This seaside expanse in Colombo, that was the site for months-long protest, is now bustling with locals and tourists enjoying a day out. Long queues have gone, food and medicine shortages have eased, and the government is making tough choices to get the economy back on track. But the real recovery in the lives of average Sri Lankan is still a long way off. As I travelled across the island nation, from the coastal fishing towns to vibrant tourist hubs and central farmlands, I saw how the harsh economic realities have forced Sri Lankans to make tough choices. These are their stories.
மீன் பிடிக்கிற வேலையே ஒரு லாட்ரி தான், அதிர்ஷ்டம் தான். அவனுக்கு லக்கண்டா ஒரு கிழமை மட்டும் கடலுக்கு பாம்புகிட்டேருந்து சாப்பிடலாம். அன்றைக்கு ஒரு நாள் உழைக்கிற காசு. ஒரு வாரத்திலேயே எங்களுக்கு ஒரு 2 நாள் 3 நாள் மீனோட வருவோம். அப்படி அதே இது இல்லாட்டியே இல்லை தான். ஒரு வாரமும் அப்படியே மீன் இல்லாமல் தான் வர்றது. 23 வயசு எனக்கு. நான் கடத்தொழில் தான் செய்கிறேன். நான் 9 வருஷ காலமாக கடத்தொழில் செஞ்சு வர்றேன்.
You like going to the sea?
Yes, I like this. எனக்கு கடல் தான் சரியான விருப்பம். எனக்கு மட்டுமல்ல, எங்களுடைய கடத்தொழில் செய்கிற எல்லாருக்குமே விருப்பம். ஏனெண்டா கடல் ஒரு தெய்வமாக நாங்கள் நினச்சி கும்பிட்றோம். இப்போ இந்த 1 வருஷம் இல்லை, ஒரு 2 வருஷ காலமாகவே கடல் தொழில் கொஞ்சம் கஷ்டமான நிலையெல்லாம் போய் கொண்டு வருது. அதுலேயும் டெய்லி போக மாட்டோம். கடலுக்கு போகிற நாட்களும் இப்போ குறைவு. ஏண்டா எண்ணெய் ஏழ்ற விலை கூடினால், முக்கியமான காரணம் எண்ணெய் ஏழ்ற விலை கூடினதான் தான்.
First, the shortages and then a cut in the government subsidy has meant fuel is 3 times more expensive than last year, raising the risks for fishermen. There's no guarantee they can cover expenses on every fishing trip.
இப்போதைய சூழ்நிலையில் கிடைக்குமான்ற ஒரு மனநிலை எங்கள் மைண்டில் தோணணும். கிடைக்குமா, இவ்வளோ செலவழித்து போகிறோமே, கிடைக்கும். ஒரு நாளைக்கு 20 கிலோமீட்டருக்கு உள்ளே போயிட்டு வந்தோம்டா ஒரு 20,000 வரைக்கும் போகும். அதே இது 40 கிலோமீட்டர் வரைக்கும் போயிட்டோம்டா 35,000 ரூபா, 38,000 ரூபா, 40,000 வரைக்கும் போகும். போக தூரங்கள் கூட 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 நஷ்டங்கள் கூடும். அதே 40 கிலோமீட்டர் போகிற இடத்துல இப்போ என்ன 20 கிலோமீட்டரோட கிடைக்காது. அங்கால போனாலும் கிடைக்காது. இருக்கிற எங்கள்ட என்ன தான் போகும், என்ன போனால் அடிக்கிறது காசு இல்லை. அந்த ஒரு மைண்ட் செட்டில் விட்ட வந்துடுவோம் திருப்பி. 100க்கு ஒரு 20% போட்டுகளுக்கு தான் தொழில் நடக்குது. மிச்ச போட்டுகளுக்கு தான் நஷ்டத்துலாம் போகுது. நஷ்டமாக போய் இயலாமல் கையில் காசு இல்லாதாக்கள் தான் இப்படி போட்டுகளை மேலே இழுத்து வச்சுருக்காங்க. முதல் 3 வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னுக்கு 2,000 ரூபாயில் ஒரு நாள் வீட்டு செலவை பார்க்கலாமண்டா இப்போ 6,000 ரூபா வேணும். அதுவும் காணாது. இன்னும் போகிற போக்கில் கடல் தொழில் அறவையே இல்லாமல் போகும். என்ன விலையெல்லாம் இப்படிலாம் இருந்தால் மீண்ட விலைகளும் கொஞ்சம் கூடணும். இருந்தால் தான் அப்படி ஒரு கண்ட்ரோலில் போகலாம். இல்லாட்டி சரியான கஷ்டம் கடல் தொழில்.
More than 250 kilometers south on the island's coast in Arugambe, the tide is turning for some. Tourism is riding the first waves of recovery. In this town on the eastern coast of Sri Lanka, the peak of the economic crisis coincided with their main tourist season, hitting local businesses hard. And this surfing destination is still picking up the pieces.
I started surf school a long time ago, so therefore I had some savings, so I put my old savings to, I had a dream that I want to set up a cafe. So I spent it about 20,000 and I still haven't recovered.
Go down and then lead it backwards.
I work as a surf instructor, and I own a surf school and a surf shop and a small homestay. I born here and live here. This is my hometown. 2019, the Lolly Planet actually put they site the picture as a cover picture, the Elephant Rock picture. So they say, I think in 2019, the best travel destiny was Sri Lanka. I remember that's been, highlights in social media. So therefore, a lot of the people were involved in the tourism, and the one who have a small house, so they invest their money, the money they make from the fishing and farming, to involve in the tourism. Why? They knew that tourism is pumping up. So I put all the money for that cafe 2019. But then I didn't expect that 2019 we're going to have a Easter bomb blast and 2 years of pandemic, and then again economic crisis. So the problem that if we have 1 year this big issue, then we wouldn't worried about it. We can recover, but we get 1 year after the other year, So then we all have to struggle, and we all have to survive at the end of the day. So all the people that I know so far, they have to find new jobs. North always has to be up higher. Sri Lanka is still haven't fully recovered yet. Of course, now we have petrol, country slowly up and running, which is, I'm very proud. And we see a little amount of tourists here. But still, I thinking due to the price change, we cannot afford to buy things, it's still, we're struggling a lot. Of course, we have to put price up for our surf lessons and for the accommodation, but still we pay quite a lot of money for the electricity bill and, for other basic needs.
For one thing, foreign tourists are back, giving a boost to Sri Lanka's tourist trade, which is one of its biggest foreign currency earners. This has made some of the bigger players more optimistic about navigating the patchy recovery.
The recovery so far is quite magical for us. We Sri Lankans didn't expect the recovery to be this fast. 12 months ago, we were not sure whether this country will exist. I'm chairman of Jetwing Symphony PLC and been involved in the tourism industry since 1987, so it's been a long time. The most difficult period in running a business, I believe, is over. We simply wasn't sure by mid of 2022 whether we will survive by now. The most important thing for us is to see that the return of the tourists, return of the airlines. Being an island, if you don't see airlines coming into the country, forget it. So the Emirates, the Qatars, the Singapore Airlines, Air India, all these big carriers are coming back, and they are increasing their frequencies to the country along with our national carrier Sri Lanka.
Crowded beaches, busy hotels are promising signs. But the government measures aimed at stabilizing Sri Lanka's economy are also hindering growth for businesses.
I can't see a lot of new development happening, construction happening till the cost of borrowing comes down. It went up to 32%. Now it's come down to about 22%, and we expect the cost of borrowing to come down further. Until that happens, I can't see any major borrowing happening from not only the leisure sector, but other sectors as well, because it's impossible to pay. That's why we are hoping that the interest rates will come to at least single digit towards the end of the year, early next year, and then we are comfortable again. If we in the private sector wait till politically everything is stable, I don't think it will ever happen. I can't see Sri Lanka being politically perfectly stable ever. So are we going to give in to that pressure and stop developing our country?
The country's stability was shaken last year. When cash and fuel starved, Sri Lanka ran out of basics. The economic hardships brought back long-simmering anger towards the government, and allegations of corruption. Enraged citizens took to the streets demanding accountability and a regime change. Aragalya, meaning struggle in Sinhala, became synonymous with the people's movement. Months later, protesters stormed the government power centres that expelled Sri Lanka's once popular and powerful Rajapaksa family.
ගිය අවුරුද්දේ ජූලි මාසේ මාව අත්අඩංගුවට අරගෙන බන්ධනාගාරගත කරා. මාසයකට ආසන්න කාලයක් මට බන්ධනාගාරේ ඉන්න සිද්ධ වුණා. මාව අත්අඩංගුවට ගන්න හේතුව වෙන්නේ එතන ගෝල්ඩ් ෆේස් ඒ අරගල ඇතුලේ ක්‍රියාකාරී භූමිකාවක් කරපු හින්දා. ඒ අත්අඩංගුවට ගැනීමත් එක්ක තවත් නඩු කිහිපයකටම නඩු 4කට පමණ මේ අරගලයේ සම්බන්ධ සිද්ධීන් වලට මාව මේ චෝදනා කරලා තිනවා. තවමත් ඒ නඩු සඳහා අපි මාසයකට සැරයක් සද්දයකට සැරයක් උසාවියේ පෙනී ඉන්නවා. මම මේ වෙනකොට නිදහස් මාධ්‍යවේදියෙක් විදිහට වැඩ කරනවා. මම අනිද්ද පත්තරේ කතෘ මණ්ඩල සමාජිකයෙක් විදිහට වැඩ කළා සහ මම විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ශිෂ්‍යයෙක්. මම රුහුණු විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ මහා හිස් සංගමයේ මේ රටේ 69 ලක්ෂයක් මිනිස්සු ඡන්දෙ දීලා පත් කරපු ජනාධිපති කෙනෙක්. එයා තමයි ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂ. ඒ ජනාධිපති ගත්ත වැරදි තීරණ සහ එතනින් ඊට කලින් හිටපු පාලකයෝ මේ රටට කරපු දේවල් දූෂණ සහ මේ රටේ මිනිස්සු කයට පෑගෙන දූවිලි විදිහට සලකලා ඒ තමන්ගේ පන්තිය රැකගන්න ඔවුන් කටයුතු කරපු ඒ සියලු සාධක නිසා ගෝඨාභය රාජපක්ෂට ගෙදර යන්න වුණා. ඒ මිනිස්සු පත් කරපු විධායක ජනාධිපති කෙනෙක් තමයි මිනිස්සු එකතු වෙලා මිනිස්සුන්ගේ බලය පෙන්නලා යවු. ඉතින් ඒක විශාල ජයග්‍රහණයක්. ගෝඨාභය ගියා කියලා දැන් අරගල ඉවර නැහැ. රාජපක්ෂ රෙජිම් එක සහ ඊට කලින් හිටපු පාලකයොත් මේ අර්බුදයට වග කියන්න ඕන. ඒ වගේම දේශපාලන වෙනසක් සහ ආර්ථික සාධාරණත්වයක් මිනිස්සුන්ට ලබා දිය යුතුයි.
Soon after President Gotabaya fled and resigned, the then Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe was sworn in as the new president. A few weeks later, the former president returned to the country. He now lives in a government bungalow and many members of his cabinet are back at the parliament.
හමුදා රාජ්‍යයක් පොලිස් රාජ්‍යයක් විදිහට තමයි මේ වෙනකොට ලංකාව තියෙන්නේ. එන මිනිස්සුන්ට තියෙන මූලික ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රීය අයිතියක් තමයි අදහස් දැක්වීම විරෝධය දැක්වීම කියන එක. එතකොට ඒව සියල්ල මුළු මොනින්ම අහෝසි කරලා තියෙනවා. මේ ගෙනියන සම්පූර්ණ මේ ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍ර විරෝධී පාලනයක් කරලා ලෝකෙට පෙන්වන්න හදනවා සාමකාමී කියන එක. ඒක සම්පූර්ණයෙන් බොරුවක්. ඒ කියන්නේ මිනිස්සුන්ගේ ප්‍රශ්න එහෙම පිටින්ම තියෙනවා.
In the recent months, the scale of anti-government protests has come down, but the public discontent is still palpable.
What this government has done is that the protests have been met by repression. So that repression has also silenced certain communities. There is fear in terms of what it may entail by protesting. There are continuous arrests, there is surveillance, there are people who are called in for questioning. So the freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, freedom to protest is under immense threat in Sri Lanka. We've been litigating in the public interest for the last 25 years. Just in the last year, the new faces that come to court to challenge has been quite remarkable.
Some of the protesters have been arrested under a controversial law aimed at preventing terrorism. The government is now going further, proposing a new Anti-Terrorism Act, or ATA as it's commonly referred to, which it says is needed to maintain stability.
The ATA, the problematic things are that it still provides broad powers to the police, to the executive arm, to shut down dissent. And it also has a provision that would have restrictions on media reporting. So there are extremely problematic, very broad powers that are given to the executive arm.
Informing that
We met Sri Lanka's foreign minister and questioned him about whether the government is clamping down on the public's right to free speech and assembly. Is the government cracking down on protests?
If you have gone around the country, you can see everybody every day protesting. So there is no problem with that. But the moment the peaceful protest cease to be peaceful, take the law into their own hands. Law enforcement officers decide on that particular period of time, here is the threshold, they are breaching that threshold, violating the law. Anything goes beyond can be dangerous to the public health and the public security and public order, and they arrest somebody.
Has the threshold of what complies as a peaceful protest come down for the government?
The threshold in the sense, if you can see the last year what happens, initially they stormed the presidential palace. Then they stormed the president's office. They killed one of our colleagues in the parliament just on the street. So what is the threshold I'm talking about? Huge difference between what was taking place 1 year ago. I understand that. 13 hours of power cut, 5 days of queue for your fuel, 2 months of queue for your gas, skyrocketing prices, no fertilizer, no medicine. So, but then we have brought that in. And now you need to have a little bit of breathing space. Tourists to come, foreign currencies to come, investors to come. So if you violate in that with a very narrow political sense, I don't think that's in national interest. That's in their own self-interest.
You are coming up with a new anti-terror law. What is the status of the reformed and the amended version coming in?
There were a lot of concerns, and rightfully so. I myself have expressed certain concerns on that. International community expressed, our civil society like Bar Association expressed. So we have taken all this into consideration and tried to accommodate all those concerns, drawing the right balance between the national security and the freedom of expression, and try to get in line with international standard.
There were certain allegations raised against the previous government headed and led by Gotabaya Rajapaksa and his family on corruption. Has there been any set of investigations that the government has, this new government has started on those allegations?
I think government shouldn't do investigation. That power is vested with the Attorney General, with the Bribery Commission, with the police. They must be given an independent task to go ahead and do it. It's a matter based on the evidence before them, for them to do it. Merely because of somebody is shouting, go and investigate, put the man inside, put the man outside. We cannot do that in a democracy. You know, I mean, people can say anything. But if there are evidence, sound evidence, it is the responsibility of those people who are allegating or coming out with those allegations to provide those information which will be sufficient to start an investigation.
To help prepare the economy, Sri Lanka secured a crucial $3 billion loan from the International Monetary Fund. In exchange, the government promised to renegotiate loan terms with its creditors and reduce expenses. The government has cut its budget on health and education. Subsidies on fuel, power and cooking gas have been slashed, making them expensive, and taxes have been steeply raised. The nation's workforce is anxious. The government's plan to raise funds by privatizing state-run companies such as insurance, airlines and telecom has fueled fears of job losses. Trade unions are back on the streets protesting under close vigil this time.
As the working class and the working people of the country, what we say is that do not put the burden of this economic crisis and the IMF conditions on the working class, because the working class is already penalized through this recession.
In spite of the stability the government is trying to portray on a surface level, at the ground, on the ground, workers, normal people, ordinary people are suffering. So we don't see any usefulness of the program that is being carried out by the Ranil Wickremesinghe government.
In my opinion, the good governance systems.
The government says a reversal in reforms is not possible.
We believe as a government, we are emerging from a crisis. So we need a reasonable time frame to let the market stabilize. So all removal of subsidies on fuel and the electricity tariffs are being reflected on the increase of the welfare benefits which are being extended to the poor and the public. So yes, we have increased taxes. We have removed subsidies from people who do not require subsidies, but at the same time, people who should receive subsidies are being looked after by the government.
For some, the crisis is still not over. Nearly a third of Sri Lanka's workforce is employed in agriculture, holding a key to the nation's food security. But most are small-scale farmers, leaving them vulnerable even to minor disruptions.
මේ හරි ඔක්කොමලා ආය ගොවිතැන් කරන අය ඔක්කොම ණය අරන් තමයි ගොවිතැන් කරන්නේ. මීට කලින් නම් ඉතින් කට්ටිය මාසම් නෑ බැංකු ලෝන් ආරේ මේ අරගෙන ඉතින් ආදායම් තත්ත්වය හොඳ හින්දා ණය ගෙවලා ඉවර කරනවා. දැන් අපි ආදායමක් ගත්තාම මේ දේවල් ණය එහෙම බේරනකොට ඉතින් සුළු ප්‍රමාණයක් වාගේ ඉතුරු වෙනවා. දැන් මේ අවුරුදු දෙක තුනේ එහෙමවත් කරන්න බෑ. අක්කර 3ක් ඉතින් කරා දැන් අර පොහොර මිලත් එක්ක පොහොර ගන්න බැරි හින්දා අක්කරයක විතර වගේ තමයි ගොවිතැන් කරන්නේ. මගේ වයසත් අවුරුදු 50යි දැන්. මම ඉන්නේ පොළොන්නරු දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ රොටගන ගම්මානයේ. අපි ගොඩ ගොවිතැන් කරනවා වගේම වී ගොවිතැනත් කරනවා. මගේ පවුලේ 7 දෙනෙක් ඉන්නවා. මම පොත්ගලික බැංකුවල ණය අරන් තියෙන්නේ. ඉතින් එයාලා මේ ගෙවුවේ නැත්තම් ගෙවල් වලට පණ යොදවනවා නඩු වැටෙනවා කියනවා. ඒ හින්දා කුලී වැඩ කරලා හරි දානවා ඉතින් ඒක. බැංකුවෙන් ලක්ෂ 1.5ක් අරන් තියෙනවා. පොලියට ලක්ෂ 2ක් අරන් තියෙනවා. දුවගේ මගේ රත්තරන් බඩු තියලා ලක්ෂ 4ක් අරන් තියෙනවා. මේ ඔක්කොම ලක්ෂ 7ක් විතර මං ණය වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේවා දැන් ගෙවා ගන්න බැරි තත්ත්වයක් තමයි තියෙන්නේ.
90% of Sri Lanka's crops depend on imported chemical fertilizers, and a sudden ban on them 2 years ago led to massive food shortages. Is this rice from your own field? No. Sri Lanka, once self-sufficient in food, now had to import its staple, rice. Even after the ban was reversed, farmers can't afford to pay for fertilizers.
දෙදාසිසියකේ ආණ්ඩුව මේ රසායනික පොහොර නතර කරලා කාබනික පොහොර දෙනවා කියලා කිව්වා. ඊට පස්සේ කාබනික පොහොර වලින් වැඩ කරන්න බෑ. අපිට ඒ දීපු ප්‍රමාණයත් මදි. තියෙන දෙයක්වත් ගොඩ ගන්න කොහොමත්ම බැරි වුණා. ඉතින් පොහොර නැත්තරම නැති වුණානේ. සල්ලි වලටවත් ගන්න පොහොර නැති වුණා. මේ ඒ වගේ අයින් කරන්න ඉතින් හොඳට හැදිලා ආදායම් මේ තත්ත්වයේ ඉන්නකොට එහෙම දෙයක් වෙච්චා ඉතින් ගොඩක් දුක හිතුණා. කරන්න කියන්න දෙයක් නැති වුණා. කලින් නම් පොහොර තිබ්බේ මේ රුපියල් 350ට 2021 පොහොර නැති වුණාට පස්සේ මේ 40000ට ගියා. දැන් නම් රුපියල් 10000 ගානට පොහොර මිටිය තියෙනවා ඉතින්. රජයෙන් ආවත් 10000 පන්නලානේ පොහොර තියෙන්නේ තාම. ඉතින් ගන්න ගොඩක් අපහසුයි. කොහොම හරි ඉතින් දුප්පත්කම තුමා ඉතින් ප්‍රශ්න විසඳ ගන්නවා. දැන් ඉතින් ගොඩාක් ආර්ථික ප්‍රශ්න හින්දා ගොඩක් අමාරුයි. ඉස්කෝලේ යවා ගන්න අමාරුයි. 3 වේලක් කෑව නම් දැන් 2 වේලක් වාගේ කාලා ඉන්න තමයි වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ විදිහට තමයි ජීවිතේ ගෙවන්නේ ඉතින් දැන් කොහොමද?
In the last 3 years, poverty has doubled in Sri Lanka, which was once the fastest growing middle income economy. Hundreds of thousands left the country last year in what was Sri Lanka's highest ever migration. The brain drain adding to an already patchy economic recovery. Across towns and villages, people are trying to rebuild their lives and livelihoods. For now, one of shrunken incomes, compromises, and diminished expectations.
எங்களுக்கு அரசாங்கத்தால் எதுவும் பண்ணணும்டா டீசல் பெட்ரோல் மண்ணெண்ணெய் முக்கியமாக 3 தான் இதுக்கு காரணம். இதுகள விலைகள் குறையுமெண்டா நான் அன்றாடம் தொழில் செய்யலாம், நல்லா இருக்கலாம், இங்கே இருக்கலாம். வெளி இடங்களுக்கு போக மாட்டாங்க.
I hope we will have a great economy again, and everyone should have a good life, that we don't expect anyone to come and give us the donations. So we could be all independent.
There is unhappiness among the people, that's for sure. The extreme change they wanted didn't happen, that's correct. But there will be an election coming up soon, and each citizen of this country will have a vote, right? Then there is an opportunity for them to change. I mean, until then, we must focus on the economy, get the economy right.